Do you bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
And a good morning, Eagle Nation. Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 365 with the Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald on this now less than 2-week Tuesday to when the Birds return to the field in the semifinals. They get to take a week off that everybody else is working hard. Well, at least the other 12 teams that are in the playoffs, and not the Kansas City Chiefs, but you get my drift. The bye week is a big thing for the Philadelphia Eagles, but we've got to come up with storylines and topics to run by you guys before we ever find out who the Eagles will be playing after this weekend's playoff action. Johnny Mac, I think yesterday I asked you about Nick Sirianni. You said not going to be available, pushing his usual Monday appearance to Tuesday this week. They've got flexibility because they are the number one seed in the NFC. Anything you're looking forward to out of Sirianni today? You think he got any curveballs to throw you, or going to be standard Nick operation?
No, standard Nick Sirianni experience today. Understandably so. It's they're in a good position. They're exactly where they wanted to be. Now, maybe at the end of the season didn't unfold the way people liked, but as Nick will quickly remind you, you don't get extra wins for style points. So they got where they needed to go. The Super Bowl goes through Lincoln Financial Field. They're getting healthier at a right time. CJ Gardner-Johnson being back. That's a big get back. Lane Johnson expected back for the playoffs. Jalen Hurts expected to be healthier for the playoffs. So, it's all positive from the head coach's perspective. And I think he's right, to be honest. I think, I was thinking about it. I kind of stepped back, Jody, and the NFL, I think a lot of its popularity is fueled by the time in between games, because that's why we exist here, right? Everybody gets so in the weeds. You're a baseball guy. Now, managers get second guessed all the time, but guess what? There's a game the next day usually, and people move on and turn the page to the next day. In the NBA, might be a couple days, but they turn the page pretty quickly. There's constant looking and over-analysis and paralysis by over-analysis. And now it's even picked up further because they have a bye week. So we're going to go through all this, and it's fun and it's all that. But this is the best team in the NFC by a wide margin. It has been for the entire year. I went through the PFF rankings. They grade 13 categories, so it's final. I believe, 12 of those 13 categories, they're in the top half of the NFL, top half. 9 of those 13, they're top 10. They're the number one overall team, basically from start to finish. Kansas City was very close, but they were the number one overall team. I mean, and the NFC side, Jody, man, it's never been easier. Never been easier when you look at it from the perspective of the quarterbacks and the potential roads. And I always say you can talk yourself into things in the NFL because everybody has good players. Everybody has good players. This is not TCU versus Georgia. You're not going to see that kind of mismatch in the NFL. Even if you want to go all the way down to Chicago, people will talk that, they've the number 1 overall pick. They're the worst team. Or if you want to go to Houston, which Lovie Smith screwed their ability to get Bryce Young. They all have good players. So you can talk yourself into a lot of stuff, but the Eagles have more good players. So they're in a good position. They're in a very good position.
They are in a good position. San Francisco's the only team that's scaring me at all in the upcoming NFC East playoffs. You mentioned the Bears and the Texans because the Eagles got to play both of those teams this year. Played them both on the road, played them both in games that might have been a little bit closer than Eagle Nation felt comfortable with. But, of course, they won both games, seeing as they went 14-3. They weren't losing to a team of that magnitude. I think it ended up, like you said, end of the season, you can do some final calculations, PFF's grades for the overall season. Well, one of them that you can do is strength of schedule, because strength of schedule varies. As we go through the season, it was like, oh, they're undefeated because they haven't played anybody. Well, that wasn't true. It was overstated for sure, and it wasn't exactly true. But they finished up the season. Eagles played the 23rd toughest schedule out of the 32 teams in the National Football League, which is not tough because they had the Bears and Texans, and the schedule falls the way it falls. Well, one of the things that happens at the end of the season, and we can do that here on Birds 365 because if we were one of the 12 teams that are going to be playing this week, we'd be narrow focused on the opposition for the big game coming up over the weekend. We can't do that with the Eagles because we don't know who the Eagles are going to play. So we can take a look at something like the schedule next year. As soon as the season's over and done with, you're playing the following season. The only thing you don't know are the dates that those games are going to be played because it's a schedule that they put into a formula, and immediately who you're going to be playing. Have you seen the Eagles schedule, J-Mac, for next year for 2023?
Yeah, I got a bunch of oh, look at how difficult it is.
It is.
Yeah, I got a bunch of that. Yeah, I don't buy into that for this reason, Jody. I mean, how many teams are in the playoff? The NFL sends this out every single year, right? How many playoff teams were not in the previous season's playoffs? Every single year.
Right, there's a turnover.
It's 2020. It goes all the way back to 1990. But in recent years, we'll go back, 2017 when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. And by the way, they weren't in the playoffs the year prior. 8 teams were not in the playoffs in 2016, but were in the playoffs in 2017. 2018, 7 teams. 2019 was the worst year, only 5. 2020, 7. 2021, 7. 2022, 7. So, everybody assumes because you're good one year, you're going to be good the next. Now, there are teams like Kansas City with a consistent standard of they're going to be good. The head coach is a big part of it. The quarterback is even more of a big part of it, to be honest. You have that consistent standard. They're going to be good. There are a few teams like that. Man, there is so much upheaval in this league from season to season. If whomever gets Bryce Young, if Bryce Young turns out to be a star right away, you could have Chicago or Houston in the playoffs. That's how drastic it could be. That's how quick it could be in this league. So, yeah, I got like 10 Twitter. Oh, my God, how difficult it is. First of all, me. I'm saying, hey, how about focusing on a 14-win team that's going to make a run potentially to the Super Bowl? Worry about that a little bit later. But the second part is, I guarantee you the number is going to be that we can put the floor at 5 but it's probably going to be 7 because it's been 7 the last 3 years, the last 3 seasons. That's how many different teams are going to be in the playoffs. So you could look at the easy team and say, oh, we're going to, it's not that way in the NFL.
Understood, but I think it's worth noting. You're right. You need to reanalyze. This isn't because you look at the teams today and you see that 11 out of their 17 games next year are against teams that made the playoff this year. I certainly think that's worth noting. The fact that they have the number 1 strength of schedule on paper going into next year is worth noting. And then you readjust as the season's ongoing. You go, all right, these weren't as good as we thought. Damn, like a team like the Rams. They only have 2 games out of the 17 where they're facing a team that was worse than 7-10. The Jets were 7-10. They finished last in their division, but they were not all that far below 500. The only 2 games they got against teams that were well below 500 were the Rams and the Cardinals. Now, who knows? Maybe the Rams, Stafford stays healthy. The coach decides to stick around and they get it turned around next year. They're only 1 year removed from being a Super Bowl winning team. So even the teams that look like lesser lights on the schedule could jump up. It goes both ways. Both teams that you think are going to be good don't achieve, and teams that you think, all right, well, they're buried. They stunk this year. They can jump up and become very good. I'm just noting that on paper, it looks like a very tough schedule.
But we could do it analytically. Alec Halaby, I'll give him a hat tip. There's 14 playoff teams, right? So there's 7 new ones the last 3 seasons. So that means 50%. What did you say, 11? 50% of that 11, you can't get to 50. So 5.5 of those teams aren't going to be in the playoffs. Hopefully that's not the Eagles. That's what you got to be concerned about. The consistent standard of being a good football team. I think the Eagles are set up to be a good football team for a while because they have a good head coach and they have a good young quarterback. But that's what you got to worry about. And we're in hiring season now. So there's 5 teams looking for head coaches. 60% of them already asked to interview Shane Steichen. Already the rumors are fueling in Houston about John Gannon. There are a lot of things that can go south. And when you start to lose good coaches, that's going to affect you. There's a lot of things. The Eagles are in that category as well. There are going to be 50% of the teams in the playoffs this weekend, starting this weekend, that aren't going to be in the playoffs next season. And if I were an Eagles fan, that would be my concern, to make sure the Eagles have that consistent standard. If they play like they did this year, they're going to win 12, 13, 14 games again.
Right. It's I'm not even going there, but I just thought it was of note that we should take a peek at the schedule that they have next year. Because you're right. And there are teams that made the playoffs this year, won't next year. Like I said, St. Louis, the Rams. They didn't make the playoffs this year, but who knows? Maybe they jump right back up and they become a 12-win team again next year. So while you lose teams, you also have the potential of adding teams. And the Eagles, of the teams that are on their schedule this year, they've got the best record of winning percentage from this season going forward to next. And that's what happens when you finish in first place, because 3 of your games are determined by where you finish. So you're playing other first place teams. In this case, for the Eagles, it added Minnesota and Kansas City. A 13-win team and a 14-win team. Yeah, that's the price you pay for winning a division like the Eagles did this year. All right. You brought up the already requests going out for Eagles coordinators for the only 5, as of right now, only 5 coaching openings, which, again, in compared to previous years, is a little on the light side. Usually it's 7. Sometimes it's get up to 8 on a really turnover year. It can get even as high as 10. On a lesser year, it'll be down around 4 or 5, and it's a 5 right now, which means as of now, it's a lesser year. But remember, it was only a couple of years ago that the Philadelphia Eagles decided to change their coach. They didn't do so till a week after Black Monday. Yesterday, everybody gets fired around the NFL. Well, the Texans beat the bunch by firing Lovie Smith on Sunday night, and we already had a couple of job openings. Teams really beat the Christmas rush and fired guys in season. So Black Monday didn't turn out to be all that black, except in Arizona. But the desire to talk to Eagles coordinators has already begun. Jonathan Gannon, Shane Steichen, both to the Texans. 2 more teams reached out for Shane Steichen's availability. And, I told you here yesterday, hot take of the day, I think Shane Steichen could get the Texans job over Jonathan Gannon for one reason and one reason only, John. It's an offensive league. And
yeah, well, I say it all the time. I mean, defensive coaches have a extra hurdle because most of the teams are going to be looking for an offensive coach. And that's why you have Shane getting, 60% of the teams. And so far, Jonathan's only gotten 1 request. It was pretty amazing. He got 3 requests last year. He interviewed with Houston, Denver, in Minnesota. Now he had a history with Minnesota, so you can understand that. When he had a history with Denver from the perspective that the ex-assistant general manager in Minnesota went to Denver. So that's how these things happen. Sort of, you have these relationships, and people want to talk to you, and relationships are everything in this league. And that's why I think, if Jonathan's going to get a job, it's Houston, because he's got a tremendous relationship with the GM there, which is Cleveland based. And that's why I think he's such, and Aaron Wilson, who's about as plugged in down there as anybody. Well, I always say John McMullen, our buddy on the show, is even more so, but Aaron's very plugged in as well. He speculated on Gannon right away. That tells you a lot. And again, it's got to do with the relationship of the GM, and who knows, Nick Cesario, who knows how much power he has down there. He hasn't been knocking it out of the park himself. So who knows how that will go with Shane. Shane's a hotter guy now, and it was the opposite last year. Shane's, 1, because offensive, 2, because of Jalen Hurts' development. And he's a big part of that. And people around the league notice it. And yeah, I mean, what helps the Eagles, about the only thing that helps the Eagles in this coaching carousel is the fact that they project to have a deep run in the playoffs. And a lot of these, usually organizations looking for coaches, usually, not all, the Eagles being a perfect example when they moved on from Doug Peterson. But most of these organizations are bad organizations. They're in the position for a reason. Some of them consistently, like Houston, and they make bad decisions, and they get rushed, and they feel they need to do things quickly, and they jump the gun, and they a lot of times you see it. The teams that go to the Super Bowl, their coordinators, you would think, would have the best opportunities. A lot of times they're kind of blocked out because people don't have the patience to wait. So the longer the Eagles go, it's probably the better for them to keep their coordinators, to be honest. And it happens every year in this league. And there's going to be a couple more. I think the Rams are going to be looking for a coach. I don't think Sean McVay wants any part of a rebuilding. And who knows, you might have another curveball. So, Eagles keep winning. It actually helps.
Yeah, their availability, they're going to take advantage of it this week and get their interviews in. But as far as second interviews go, and potentially making the offer to one of their 2 coordinators to take over as head coach somewhere else, can't come quick enough. But I will, and I know this would be really difficult to look up. One of the reasons why, despite the relationships, I don't think Gannon's going to get the Houston job is, when was the last time a team in the NFL fired a defensive coach? And when I say defensive, tied to the defensive side prior to being the head coach, and then hired another defensive coach. That just doesn't happen. If a defensive coach gets fired, I'm giving you off the top of my head, 95% of the time, the next head coach is going to be an offensive guy. And that's a pretty steep number for Jonathan Gannon to get over. That's why I said I think Steichen's got a better chance at that gig. Relationships aside, you just don't go back-to-back defensive coaches. It doesn't happen in the NFL. It hasn't happened in 2 decades.
I normally, you're 100% right, Jody. There's a pendulum effect, but I would be careful with Houston for this reason. It's not a typical situation. I don't think they hired the coach they wanted to hire because they didn't have the courage to handle the criticism. Now, that could have been Jonathan Gannon. That could have been Josh McCown. It was one or the other. So they're a little bit different than the typical, we're just moving on because we screwed up and we're going to go in a different direction. Same thing with sort of disciplinarians versus player coaches. You usually have a pendulum effect with that as well. So Houston is a little bit different because they've been so screwed up for the past couple of years. They're just trying to get a leader, trying to get somebody to lead the organization. It's not the typical situation. Denver as well, because I think they're going to go with an offensive coach after hiring an offensive coach. But
offense into offense happens. Defense into defense doesn't happen in the NFL.
And Nathaniel Hackett was such a disaster. They're just going to try to erase that from history and just try to help Russell Wilson out. So I think, I'm a little surprised they're not one of the teams that has asked to talk to Shane. I'm a little surprised by that. But
so you wanted 80% of the openings to involve Shane.
Well, everybody works off the same list. That's the joke of this league. Everybody works off the same list. But I see D Gunn. We got to get the D Gunn.
Derek Gunn, our very own, is going to join us next. Yeah, you'll hear him in a couple hours on his show, which is phenomenal, by the way. But most importantly, he's going to be here with us. And he's coming up next. Derek Gunn jumping aboard Birds 365. Stick around.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Ram starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Game Show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post Game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Jumping into the stream here on Birds 365 with your Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald. We're joined by a fellow JAKIB host. You got him in the afternoons here on Sports Take, and of course on Sundays with his boy Seth Joyner. We just played the promo, and Mike Missinelli and Devin Caney on the Eagles post-game show. Our buddy Derek Gunn jumps in with us, and I hadn't realized. D. Gunn, you did not make an in-season appearance. The last time we had you on was preseason. Why does it seem like it hasn't been that long ago?
Well, from what I was told, both you and John McMullen deliberately blocked me from the show. I don't know what I did to offend you both, but I understand. And because it's a new year, I have a new attitude. I will not hold any grudges against my fellow man, nor my fellow cohorts here in the JAKIB Sports Media Machine.
All right, you got to take a bullet. I'll take the bullet because it's we both booked. John and I both booked the guests, but I was the guy. You know, we haven't had D Gunn on forever. I brought you up yesterday, so that's on me. That's my bad. I'll take the blame for that one. Shame on us. We should have had you on sooner. My bad.
That's okay. No, that's okay. I understand. You guys have a great show. You don't need me. It's understandable.
Oh, we need D Gunn. Come on. I desperately. I'm going to hang on to you like a life raft right here. D.
Oh, man. Hey, and a belated Happy New Year to both of you.
Hey,
same to you, big guy.
Same to you. Well, you know, it's an exciting new year. The Eagles got the #1 seed, obviously. Maybe not with the style points a lot of the fan base wanted, but you know, I've taken kind of a step back over the past couple days here, D Gunn, and man, they're set up. I'm not concerned at all. I sit here and look at this potential path, and there's not too many teams on this side of the bracket in the NFC that scare me, especially at Lincoln Financial Field. The one exception would be the San Francisco 49ers, who I think have a very good team, very well-rounded team. But I'm sorry, they have a rookie third-string quarterback started. If I'm a Son Reddick and I'm those guys on the defensive side of the ball, I want to be the team to knock him off the peg, so to speak.
I'm very curious to see how he handles the bright light and the pressure of postseason play. Compared to regular season play, the intensity and the pressure is magnified tenfold because you're one and done. You know, if you make minuscule mistakes during a regular season, obviously you have the next game to fix and tweak whatever mistakes that you've made. You don't have that luxury now, and you know teams are going to come at him differently. You know, they have enough game tape on him now to do whatever they can to try to rattle him. But I will say this, as I've said, you know, for consecutive weeks leading up to this point, you know, kudos to Kyle Shanahan for what he's been able to do in terms of getting this young man settled in a hurry and the team as a whole not missing a beat. When you think about when he took over this team, it was at a crucial juncture against which was a really good Miami team. And, you know, Garoppolo goes down the second series of the game, and you're thinking, who the heck is Brock Purdy? Doesn't even have a football name. This kid comes in, and the machine keeps rolling. And here we sit. They've won 10 in a row, okay? And I've had a chance to see him play 2-3 times between that moment and now. And this kid – they let him make all the throws. He can throw on the run. But when you look at the wealth of talent he is encircled with, and now Deebo Samuel is back, you know, I think the biggest plus for them was that trade they made for Christian McCaffrey was a crime. I don't know who allowed that trade.
You're right.
But that was a crime, you know. And so it only enhanced that offense that much more. But you're right. That young man will get his feet wet this weekend at home, but eventually if they keep winning, he's got to go on the road and he's got to come here to face this defense, which is arguably as good of a defense as that 49ers defense.
Yeah, I can't believe you guys are going to make me play devil's advocate and sing the praises of
Brock Purdy defense. Usually I'm the San Francisco guy.
Right now, the guy who's probably going to win the MVP, Patrick Mahomes, finished with the second best quarterback rating. And yes, I readily acknowledge quarterback rating is an imperfect way to look at quarterbacks. except for every other one. It's the best of a imperfect lot. Mahomes is at 105.2. Jalen Hurts is third. Tua actually hung on and had the best quarterback ranking, believe it or not, even though he finished the season as badly as he did. Jalen Hurts, 101.6. Brock Purdy, 107. He's got a better quarterback rating than either Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts.
Stop. I'm going to be the vegan.
What do you mean stop? The numbers are the numbers.
He didn't play the whole season. He didn't come close to playing the whole season.
Correct. But you can only judge him on the plays, the games that he did start, right?
To call that number imperfect is a disservice to imperfect. Yeah, I'm looking it up real quick.
Yeah,
just from the film, Pro Football has him 15, which is pretty good. 15 of 38, which is pretty good for a second. I mean, solid. But when Mahomes and they're asked to do more, Kyle's protecting him. Kyle's the best schemer. Yeah. Well, maybe Andy, but if it's not Andy, it's Kyle. He's doing a lot of things, and that's part of it. I mean, he deserves credit for picking up the baton. He's played better than Jimmy Garoppolo. He's played better than Trey Lance, so he deserves a lot of credit. But yeah, he's not better than Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow or Jalen Hurts or the good quarterbacks in the NFC, Dak Prescott.
Who?
Yeah, exactly. Kirk Cousins. That's where you go. And this is another reason for optimism, D-Gun.
Right.
In the AFC, you got the murderers row. You got Mahomes. You got Burrow. You got Justin Herbert. You got Josh Allen. In the NFC, who's the second best quarterback? The Eagles have the best. Yeah, it's Kirk.
Kirk Cousins.
Or Dak. Dak is, I probably still put Dak ahead. I know people in this town hate Dak.
Yeah.
By the way, trivia question for you guys. What did Dak Prescott and C.J. Gardner-Johnson have in common?
I had no idea.
They both came out the same year.
They led the league in interceptions in both.
Very good.
But that's a good one.
And by the way, no, you couldn't do it to me again, McMullen. Yes, the Dak Prescott led the league in interceptions, despite missing 5 games, and there are some stats that are pretty ugly for Dak Prescott. I'll give you another one. He's 8 out of his last 9 and starts against the Philadelphia Eagles. Do we not factor that in?
I think Dak's a good player. I just said Dak to me is the second best quarterback on the NFC side. I know he's had some bad games, but I would put him ahead of Kirk Cousins.
I don't know what's going on with him, but I've looked at several of his past games, and some of those interceptions he basically telegraphed. The one he threw this past Sunday, he never looked off the primary receiver, and as you see the DBs converged, why would you throw in that window? And the ball he threw was slightly behind the receiver, right to the defensive back. I don't know what's going on with him in terms of interceptions in 7 consecutive games and 15 and 12 games for Dak Prescott. And, years past, we would applaud Dak for being a good protector of the football. He's been anything but that. But, Jody, that stat does come into play. Some players, some teams just play better against certain teams for whatever the case may be, especially within a division. Whatever the case may be, that seems to be the case. First of all, I don't even think Dallas is going to survive Monday night against Tampa, to be honest. The way Brady's slinging that ball now, and Mike Evans seems to be back. That's going to be a tough one. I don't know that if you're a betting man, Dallas should win that game, but because of the way Dallas stumbled to the finish line, because of the way Dak has been playing for much of the season, and you go back to that last game Brady just had, dropping dimes to Evans. Anybody playing Tom Brady in a postseason game, you better bring the game. You better.
I think you got to win that. If you're Dallas, I think you got to win that game in the first 55 minutes. In other words, you can't let Tom be close and have the football. Then
with
you're
2
in
minutes
trouble.
Left. Yes,
but they should be good enough to have that game in control. When there's 3 minutes left and Tampa gets the ball. But we'll see. I mean, I think there's a chance for upsets all over in the
I
NFC,
agree.
with the exception of San Francisco. San Francisco is going to beat Seattle.
Yeah.
Everybody else, even the Giants against Minnesota. Look, Minnesota should win the game, but
Giants played them tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, played them very tough.
It wouldn't
Christmas
shock me if
Right.
the Giants win the game, is what I'm saying. It wouldn't shock. Dallas should win the game against Tampa, but it wouldn't shock me if Tampa wins the game.
I will say this, John, because I've said this numerous occasions on Sports Take, that when you look at the way the entire season has played itself out in terms of who you expect to win and expect to lose, I would say on an average, there's been 3 to 4 games every week over the 17-game season where you sit back after the week is complete and go, I didn't expect that. I didn't see that coming. And I expect the playoffs to be the same way, especially because every game in a wild card weekend is a rematch from the regular season, which is interesting in itself. Every matchup, the opponents have played each other already, so they're very familiar with each other, which means they're going to be throwing the kitchen sink at each other as well. And as you just said, always expect the unexpected based on what we've seen this season leading up to wild card weekend.
And oh, by the way, one of those matchups is the Ravens and the Bengals, and the Bengals beat them twice. And that was not going to
change.
That would come damn close to shocking me. If the Ravens this week, with either Lamar hasn't played in 6 weeks, Jackson coming off the bench, we saw Jalen Hurts this week and his level of play after being out for just 2 weeks. It wasn't up at the level we thought it was going to be. Now there's an injury added in, much like Lamar. There's the injury added in. If he plays, I don't know how much faith I have in him. If Huntley plays, I know I don't have any faith in him. So add that one to your list, Johnny Mac. Yes, San Francisco is going to beat Seattle. Yes, Baltimore is going to beat, Cincinnati's going to beat Baltimore too.
Yeah.
D-Gun, a lot of concern over the last 24, 48 hours because the Eagles didn't get those style points, didn't have the blowout win that people wanted against a backup-filled Giant lineup. What's your biggest concern with the Philadelphia Eagles? 10 days out, 11 days out before they're going to play. Don't know exactly what the day is going to be. Don't even know who the opponent is. But you can evaluate your own roster. Going into that game, whoever it may be against, whenever it's played, what's your biggest concern?
Getting Lane Johnson healthy. It's obvious Jack Driscoll is not the answer on the right side. And for whatever reason, they don't want to move Mailata to the right side and insert Andre Dillard. The numbers are staggering in terms of the Eagles' win-loss percentage with Lane on the right side compared to him not being there. Now, you would think, okay, a quarterback, maybe a wide receiver, running back, but an offensive lineman having that type of impact on the success or failure of an offense is just astounding in a lot of ways. I think they need Lane back desperately to stabilize that right side. Even Lane is 85%, is 100% better than Driscoll on that right side. I've always said Jack Driscoll is a better offensive lineman moving forward in the run game than he is setting up the block. And I think the last 2 games basically have shown that. So for me, I would say ironing out the little kinks, because for 3 consecutive weeks, we've heard Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen tell us, I've got to do a better job in play calling. I've got to do a better job of this, that, and the other. Okay, well, a lot of times when you start leveling off like that, you start to see patterns that are consistent and ruts you get in that you cannot get out of. So I'm so elated that this Eagles team has that extra week to figure it out. Whereas Nick Sirianni gave the team a few days off this week, I heard Jalen Hurts was behind closed doors yesterday with Sirianni and Steichen going over film. Now, the biggest concern to me, the thing that really caught my ear was Sirianni in his postgame when he said Jalen was really hurting.
Yeah.
And as I said
that
prior,
was a surprise.
Because John, as you know, John, as you know, keeps everything close to the vest, doesn't reveal anything. But as I said prior to that Dallas game on Christmas Eve, and every time I talked to somebody, they kept telling me, oh, he'll be all right. Well, I said, well, what does that mean? He'll be all right. That was a consistent answer I would get. And every time I would ask, is it more than just a sprain? And as we sit here today, after they allowed him to sit out that Saints game when they knew that was a do-or-die game, and for your head coach to admit after the Giants game that he was really hurting, that tells me it runs deeper than just the sprain. And so moving forward, is it something he's going to have to deal with that first game they play, or just giving him that extra basically 2 weeks to get this thing treated? Will that be a significant boost in terms of how he functions in his offense? Because if it isn't, then that means they're going to reduce the number of RPOs. He's not going to be taken off running because you don't want him to take an unnecessary shot. And we've seen him take some shots that made you go, oh, when Mailata said the one game, he said, hey, do you need, you want me to get the medics? He said, hey, man, get my bleep off. Help me get my bleep off the ground. Down the stretch, teams have defended him a little bit differently. Edge rushers are more disciplined in terms of not just running to the quarterback. They run and stop to set the edge and force them to make a move. So whoever they play that first round, there's something different coming. When we had Lane Johnson on the postgame show before he got injured, he would consistently tell us for 4 or 5 weeks, D-Gun, they gave us looks we weren't expecting, which means when you're an offensive juggernaut the way the Eagles were, as a defensive coordinator, what do? You try to flip the script. You've got to throw in some gadgets to try to disrupt their continuity. And I expect with this being in the playoffs, whoever they get in the first round, except Ed Donatell. Ed Donatell's own defense stinks. Ed Donatell's defense stunk when he was in Green Bay. Ed Donatell's defense.
I know you're a Green Bay guy.
Yes.
Ed's had a difficult season. It's interesting. They run the same scheme as the Eagles.
Yes.
They run the Fangio scheme, as you know.
Yep.
And it shows you, it's all about communication. It's all about teaching. And that's why Jonathan Gannon's a good defensive coordinator for the people that dislike him. He's a tremendous teacher. Now, Ed Donatel, I think, has been coaching for about 100 years.
Yes, exactly.
The communication on that team in the back, in the secondary, is horrific, except for Patrick Peterson and Harrison Smith, because those guys have been playing forever, so they can handle everything. But all the young players just busted coverage. That's what impresses me most about the Eagles on the hindsight. For the most part, they've done a very good job with that. But when they do have problems with this defense, it's miscommunication. CJ's back. I don't think Avonte Maddox is going to be back for the divisional round, but it's pretty clear that they're not putting him on IR, so they think they might have him for either the championship game or the Super Bowl. And we'll see how that moves forward. But, for the most part, this defense has been pretty good.
Yeah.
And, we start talking about these coaches. This is another reason why you have to seize the moment, JG, because Shane Steichen's already got 3 interviews lined up already to talk about Gannon in Houston is heating up. This is the moment, right?
And they knew this going in. They knew this going into this season. If they had a good measure of success, that teams will come after your coaches. That's just the nature of the beast across the NFL, and rightfully so. So Howie, it was all in for Howie, the way they structured this team. The urgency was, let's try to win it now, because you have decisions to make. You're going to have to replace a coach or coaches, because if those 2 guys leave, Gannon and Steichen, they're going to pick off some of the Eagles' assistants and elevate them in positions as well. And who are you bringing back? You got to pay Jalen, whether you pay him that extension or whether you franchise tag him. You have to pay him. That's going to take up a good chunk of any money you have looking towards free agency. And you have so many players who are on 1-year deals, especially on that defense. Howie's got some very strategic decisions to make. Now, with 2 first-round picks, if X amount of players leave on defense, I expect them to attack the defensive side of the ball come the draft and take 2 high-profile defensive players. And there's a lot of good players coming out. If somehow, some way, Howie can work his magic and keep more people than we're thinking about, kudos to him, and then they can address other areas when it comes to the draft.
As John and I pointed out way back when, the Eagle coaching staff this year came back en masse. That just doesn't happen. No one keeps their entire coaching staff together. The Eagles did. Oh, this next upcoming year, that's not happening. There will be changes because there will be individuals who are leaving. All right, D-Gun, this is what I love about talking to you. You were there every day on top of everything beat reporter for the 2017 Eagles. People rightfully so want to compare this year to that year because the ending was pretty good. And there are some similarities.
Yeah.
The Eagles finished that year kind of limping to the finish line.
Right.
They beat the Giants. Nick Foles was okay his first start after Carson Wentz, but then he was pretty putrid against Oakland the next week. They found a way to win an ugly 19-10 game, and they went to the unstoppable Nate Sudfeld in the last game because they were protecting Nick from getting injured. But they didn't exactly fly home, and then they got to the postseason, and we know what happened. Ripped off the victories that they did. A lot of that team for me was, and you know better because you were there every day, there was a good mojo around them. And I think you understand what I mean by the word mojo.
Sure.
That they just gathered together as a group, solidarity, one focus, the one next man up mentality. How does this year's team compare to that team in mojo?
I think it's very comparable. And I'll give the Eagles organization credit for this because they have been consistent in this regard. Even before the 17 season, they are very, very adamant about finding guys who are not just exceptional athletes, but good locker room character. And I think when you look at the way both teams are structured, they were and are very good locker room character type guys. Now you've had a couple of blips on the radar, Slay calling out a guy, AJ Brown calling out a guy, but it was nothing that just blew up and became the topic of conversation for an entire week. And it's not this group as well as that group. It's not a bunch of me guys. It's a bunch of we guys. And I think the veteran leadership in that locker room that basically are holdovers from that 17 team set the standard for what's expected in that locker room. The Lane Johnsons, the Jason Kelsey's, Brandon Graham's, Fletcher Cox, those kind of guys set the example of what, hey, this is what is expected of you when you come here, not just as a player, but how you conduct your business inside and outside of this locker room. When you look at this Eagles team, you don't see a lot of outside noise like you do across the league with other teams. They don't have, did you hear of any DUIs this year with this team? Any domestic abuse with this team? Any suspensions for substance abuse with this team? No, it was a very focused group, and he kept adding pieces. You kept adding established pieces along the way. Proven veterans like an Ndamukong Suh and a Linval Joseph who know how to handle that business, and that's an all-encompassed umbrella, because new guys and young guys who come in here look at those guys and say, okay, if this is how they are doing things here, I've got to toe the line, or I'm not going to be here very long. There's some teams, some organizations, it's like the Keystone Cops. You don't know who's running the organization. Yeah. And everybody's running amok, and it shows Arizona, Houston, so on and so forth, teams like that. You don't have that problem here. And when you have that cohesiveness and continuity within the structure of a team and an organization, look at the results you can get, i.e. 2022 for this team.
And that brings me back to the quarterback. And last one from me, follow Derek at Real D Gunn on Twitter. Post-game show here, JAKIB Sports. Gunn on One, you can watch as well. JAKIB Sports YouTube page. You mentioned the guys, and they are. It starts with the guys who've been here, and Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson and Brandon. What a tremendous leader Brandon Graham is, and Fletcher as well. A little bit more understated, but still in that category. Yeah. But the quarterback, man, the young quarterback, and you bring up that phrasing, because quarterbacks are taught. Taught that when you have success, it's we. When you fail, when you have hiccups, it's me. And Jalen Hurts is that natural leader. And let's be honest, he shouldn't have played against the Giants in Week 18.
Right.
But he did play.
Right.
And I think that resonates in the locker room. In a weird way, is that maybe the silver lining? Because it's clear the Eagles didn't want him out there. They hoped they would get one win, beat Dallas or beat New Orleans, and then he could sit out until the divisional round. You think that's a silver lining, that he got back out there and played, and that just resonates with the locker room.
There's no question about it. Because if I'm looking at Jalen Hurts, I'm thinking, man, knowing what I know about his injury, if he can get out there and play, who am I to not get out there and play as well? You know, I think as a leader, I mean, Jalen Hurts to me was born to lead. You know, you look at him in Alabama, look at him in Oklahoma, there's a measure of success he had in both entities. Look at how much he's elevated his game in just 1 year here with the Eagles. At 24, 25 years old, there are people that are just born to lead. And because of it, the way his play enhanced overall, everybody stepped in line. He's like the Pied Piper of this team. You know, nobody looks at him like, hey, man, you're only 24, 25. You can't tell me what to do. And then, you know, you look at his primary weapons, they're all his age, you know, basically, you know, Devontae, Quez, you know, Dallas, they're all his age, you know. So Jalen Hurts took the role of being that guy who wanted to put the onus of success or failure on his shoulders. That's a lot to ask of a 24, 25-year-old professional in the most magnified and scrutinized position in all of pro football, that quarterback position. And he has handled everything beautifully. He has said all the right things. He has done all the right things. And this is a significant reason why this team is where it is today. I was hoping that they would put him out there against the Saints, get that win, and let him rest an additional week. Unfortunately, they spun that roulette wheel. It did not come up in their favor. Thus, he was forced into action against this Giants team. Now, I don't think he took any significant hits in that Giants game, but I think it was also, John, an opportunity for him to go out there and test. Okay, what throws bother me the most? Is it the deep throw? Is it the intermediate throw? Is it going across my body? What's the thing that irritates me the most? And I can't get that statement out of my head from Sirianni. He was hurting a lot. Okay. And he had to play the entire game hurting a lot. Okay. So I'm hoping he didn't do any more extensive damage to that shoulder, you know. And if he did, obviously we're not going to know about it because they don't tell us anything, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, he went in there, did just enough to keep the offense basically vanilla. Got a 19-point lead and cruised to the finish line. And now, hopefully, you know, with modern medicine technology and all the gadgets they use to stimulate the muscles and the tissues, hopefully over the next 2 weeks, they will get him where he needs to be.
All right, D. Gunn, I want to close it out with you with an optimistic condiment question. And here's what I mean by that. I'm a hot dog guy. I like hot dogs. I'll eat a plain hot dog.
Right.
The more stuff I can put on my hot dog, the better. I like to doctor up my hot dog. If you're an Eagle fan and you know you're getting a hot dog, right, you're stating that ahead of time, going to get a hot dog, which is a playoff victory. You know, there are 4 teams potentially that the Eagles could play. Mm-hmm. Seahawks, highly unlikely. Don't think they're beating the 49ers. But I remember Pete Carroll sticking it to the Eagles in the playoffs just a couple of years ago. The shot that Carson Wentz took him out of the game early. So there's a little revenge factor there. Mm-hmm. The Vikings, which, believe it or not, Jalen Reagor could come back to town again. And, yeah, they could push Jefferson out, even though the Eagles passed on him. That New York Giant football team, which the Eagles have kind of dominated of late, and they put up a good fight against the Eagles this past week with their subs, or the Dallas Cowboys. If you acknowledge and believe the Eagles are going to win against any of those 4 teams, which Johnny Mack has said a couple times here today, the only team that puts any fear into them is the 49ers.
Yeah. I would just add, I don't think they can play the Vikings. Tampa, Dallas, Seattle,
Tampa, I meant Tampa
Giants
instead of Vikings. Yeah. Thank you for correcting me. That Brady guy who did kind of stick his finger in the Eagles' eye last year in the postseason. You know, they won the biggest game against Brady 5 years ago, but is it even close? Do you want the Cowboys? If you believe that John McMullen is telling you the truth, that the only thing to fear is the 49ers, and, oh, by the way, they're quarterback by a rookie quarterback, who are you rooting for, the Eagles, to play this week if you're an Eagles fan?
Well, I would initially say, with John saying they probably can't play Minnesota. I would have to say, I don't know if I want to see Brady. As mediocre as that Tampa Bay team is, there's something.
Come on, you're running Brady. Scared. Johnny Mack just told you you don't have to be afraid of anybody except maybe San Francisco.
I don't put fear or scared into the equation. It's just that there is one man who sees everything,
Yeah.
who knows everything, and for whatever reason has the ability to turn that light switch on and elevate his play, especially if his pass catchers are healthy. He has his number one center back finally after missing like 14 games this season. So the offensive line has more fluidity to it now. I would have to say I would rather take my chances with Dallas coming here. Even though Dak has had a great measure of success against this team, that run defense has not gotten any better this season. If the Eagles run the ball, and we've been screaming, run the football, and they haven't had the measure of success running the football that we've been spoiled to watch. You look at the last 4 games, Chicago, Dallas, Saints, and the Giants, they haven't had that tremendous success running the football. I will still take my chances against Dallas here, especially, for whatever reason, Dak can't get out of his own way. This Eagles defense, this Eagles team has not won the turnover battle now for 4 consecutive games, and they could have had 3 or 4 picks Sunday against Davis Webb, and they didn't. Those things correct themselves. So I would go with Dallas right now.
Yeah. I'm not fearful of anyone, as you pointed out, Jody. But if you're telling me who would I rather play, it's the Giants. The Giants are terrible. The Giants have no chance to beat the Eagles. If Dallas brings their A game,
that ball comes off Reed Blankenship's shoulder pads the wrong way. They recover that onside kick. It wasn't all that far from being a competitive game in the last 2 minutes.
That's a human nature game. They beat them like a drum when it counted, 48-22.
Right.
The talent level between those two teams is so. That's the worst team in the playoffs from a talent perspective.
Right.
And they have a chance to upset Minnesota because Minnesota's got a lot of issues, a lot of injuries.
Yep.
That to me would be the perfect situation for the Eagles. So there's better situations. Dallas is talented. They might be playing poorly, but they're talented. Tampa Bay, like D-Gun said, don't spit in the wind. Don't tug Tom Brady's cape. You don't want that necessarily when measured. And Seattle's better than the Giants. So if you're asking me for the perfect scenario, they could play the Giants 100 times and they're going to beat them 99. I'll leave one sliver for them.
And as we always say, how hard it is to beat a team 3 times in one season.
Not that team. That's like Cincinnati, Baltimore.
The only thing that concerns me about the Giants is Wink Martindale's ability to bring pressure from anywhere. This Giants team blitzes over 42% of the time. That's astronomical in today's football. Wink Martindale doesn't care who lines up. You're blitzing from somewhere.
Oh, he's blitzing. Yeah.
But
then it's 50-50 ball. AJ, good luck.
Yep.
Good luck with that.
Exactly. Yeah. Their secondary's gotten a little bit healthier. They're still not a great secondary. The thing is, kudos to Dabo for what he's done with Daniel Jones.
Oh yeah.
Because his intermediate game, when you look at the Giants' success, look at him on how they have so much success. With their intermediate passing game. And Daniel Jones, man, he's zipping it in there, which has helped be able to keep the chains moving. Now, I'm not afraid of Daniel Jones. When you talk about quarterbacks you could face potentially, that's the least of my concerns. But Dabo has found a way to get the most out of Daniel Jones.
He's a very good coach.
And so you don't know. You don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. But, I would have put Dallas out of their misery. But they are a much more talented team, but for whatever reason, they still have not figured out a way to stop the run. And they let a third stringer beat them on Sunday.
Yeah, Sam Howell. Yeah.
And he ran up the middle of their defense for a touchdown from like 15 yards out.
Yeah.
So that means they still have issues in terms of defending the run. I'll take my chances against them. John's right. Maybe the Giants first. Dallas would be a close second.
D-Gun, since we know now you're available on Tuesday mornings if you don't have grandfather duties, we will reach out.
I have grandfather duties every day.
He
I'm like a school bus.
Inadvertently sent me a text last night that he meant to send to somebody else about his granddaughter. I said, hello, you talking to me? He said, oops, sorry, John.
Yeah, what happened was my oldest daughter has 3 kids. She brought the kids over, and the 18-month-old granddaughter, she's a whip. She basically tells you what she's going to do, what she's not going to do. And she stopped as a little girl. And every time she has to leave, she screams, no, fights, kicks, tooth nail, doesn't want to put her jacket on. So when I take her outside to give her to her dad, she's kicking and flailing. No, stop it. Stop it. So I was sitting there to the family and said, hey, she did it again, basically.
She likes staying with Grandpa. Well, we like having Grandpa on too, which means expect a request 3 weeks from today. After the Eagles secure NFC championship status, the Tuesday before the Super Bowl, we're getting you back on in the same exact time, same exact spot.
Well, based on how frequently you've asked me to be on from preseason,
that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm booking you now, because I dropped the football on the fact that we haven't had you on in 6 months.
I expect to be on based on past reference. I expect to be on again sometime after the draft in April.
Before the draft, somewhere thereabouts. No, you're back in 3 weeks, D Gunn.
Oh,
thank you much for jumping in with us today.
Thanks, D Gunn.
You're
Tell
welcome.
both of the boys, Big Barrett and Rob Ellis, we send our regards.
Will do.
That's Derek Gunn from Sports Take here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. And, of course, on Sundays, he gets to sit next to Seth Joyner. And sometimes I see D Gunn won't admit to this. He rolls his eyes, too, when Seth starts to go off about the lack of aggressiveness of the Eagles' defense. He does a great job with us on Sundays in the post-game stuff, too. All right, John McMullen, Jody McDonald coming back. He brought up, D-Gun brought up the draft. I want to bring up a draft thing with Johnny Mac. Yeah, I know. We can talk about the Eagles. We don't know who they're going to play, so we can only do so much with speculation. Would you rather face Brady or the Cowboys? Who do you have a better chance against? Who do you want to stick it to? Yeah. We're doing all that, yes. But there are other things to consider, one of which is the draft pick. We know the Eagles are going to draft 10th. A couple of places came out with mock drafts immediately after. It's one of those times of the year where you see that. And a couple of names to the Philadelphia Eagles that I just can't believe. I'll run them by Johnny Mac when we come back. He's McMullen, I'm McDonald. It's Mac and Mac Birds 365.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. That would make this the Mac Show on Birds 365. Appreciate you streaming on in. Hey, while you're here, go ahead and hit that like button. I forget to do this. They tell Jody, you got to tell them to hit the like button. And I forget every single day. So I apologize to my bosses at JAKIB Media because they say, you guys are getting good numbers. You get a whole bunch of streamers, but they don't hit the like button. Well, that's probably because they don't like me. But I guess I'm asking them to overlook that. Tell the world you like John McMullen. Hit that like button.
That's not going to help you. That's not going to help you.
Hit that like button right now while you're watching, while you're streaming with us. Thank you very much for doing so. All right, J-Mac, as I teased before we went to break. I think it was on NBC Sports Philly. Dave Zangaro is going to join us coming up in, 15 minutes from now? So I think it was on their website this morning, and they compiled a couple of mock drafts that are out there since we now know where each team is going to be drafting. With the regular season over and done with, they looked at where specific mock draft websites were suggesting the Eagles could be selecting at number 10 with the pick that they got from the New Orleans Saints. And one website, I think it was Pro Football Network, had Jalen Carter falling down to the Eagles at number 10.
Oh, my Lord.
I've seen other websites that suggest he will be the number 1 pick in the draft. Added a quarterback, ahead of Anderson from Alabama. He made a couple of plays last night. Georgia just stone cold.
I would say his floor. Now, full disclosure, I have done no draft work because, the Eagles are kind of in an important role in the season. Yeah. So I've done no draft prep. But Jalen Carter, the floor on him is 3. I mean, he's not falling below 3. He might go number 1. Yeah. I mean, that's absurd.
Yeah, I might go 4 because the 2 quarterbacks could go 1, 2 for me, and there's always more of an emphasis on an edge guy than a DT. And the kid Anderson is thought to be that good from Alabama. So I'm with you. We're basically on the same page, just slightly a couple of lines.
It's outrageous, though.
10th, had him falling down to number 10 to the Eagles. I'm going, please.
I will say that.
This guy isn't on the Eagles staff now, put him on the staff. Offer him a job if he can look at a crystal ball and make that happen.
I feel comfortable saying if he does fall to 10, the Eagles are going to take him.
Eagles will take him. You're going out on a limb there, McMullen.
Big limb.
Got to give you props for that one. Another one had them taking Bijan Robinson. What would you suggest the percentage chance that Howie Roseman is going to draft a running back with the 10th pick in the draft?
With the 10th pick, normally I always go 99 point, whatever. Now I'm going 100%. I'm going 100%. Now I always bring up, and I'm honestly, I haven't done much homework. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I've watched 7 Bijan Robinson games. There was one running back that the Eagles were considering taking in this era of football in the first round when they had the 14th overall pick in the 2017 draft. They would have selected Christian McCaffrey if he was there. Ultimately went, I believe, number 8. So he didn't even get close.
Not really close.
They would have taken him. So it's always about the player. But if the Eagles are going to take a running back that high, he better have that all-around skill set of Christian McCaffrey. And those guys don't exist very often. I'm pretty sure Bijan Robinson isn't that type of running back. You need to be as impactful in the passing game as you are in the running game. They're not just taking a running back. Even with second rounders, they wanted to take Dalvin Cook that year in the second round. He had some issues off the field. His reputation was very good as a pass catcher. He's been okay, hasn't been great as a pass catcher in the NFL. And even Miles Sanders, they thought was going to be a real impactful player, and hasn't worked out that way. But you got to have a well-rounded skill set, even if you're going to be taken in the second round by the Eagles.
Yeah, second round more like, I don't think 31st they're taking a running back either. But at number 10, I'm with you 100% not happening because of Howie Roseman's track record. The other three that they put out there as mock drafts, 5 different guys. Jalen Carter, good luck. Bijan Robinson, not happening. The kid Branch, the safety from Alabama. Would you be surprised if they took a safety at number 10?
Yeah. Also position related. A lot depends on, how high they're going to have to go to keep C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I don't think they want to break the bank there. That's a difficult signing. That really is. So they're going to have to take a defensive player most likely with that 10th pick because they're not going to be able to keep everybody. Cornerback, I think, is most likely. Now the problem is, in the little stuff, I don't think this is a great corner draft at the top.
No. Maybe I'm putting a little bit more draft work in than you at this stage because I got to do a national show. This is actually a pretty darn good cornerback draft.
No. I'm not saying draft as a whole. I'm saying top 10. Top 10 at number 10. I haven't seen many mock drafts, and you've certainly looked at more than me. I see the kid from Oregon, but I don't know if he's worthy of the 10th pick. I forget his name. And then Joey Porter Jr.
Yeah, that's
number 10. I don't know.
Draft Wire had Joey Porter at number 10 for the Eagles. I gave you the safety. I'll give you the one where they could go offense. I'm with you. I'd say at least 80%. Maybe 85 that they're going to take a defensive guy because they have so many defense free agents. You assume they can't keep them all, and they'll fill in free agency or lose guys via free agency long before the draft ever happens. The kid Peter Skoronski from Northwestern, an interior offensive lineman. I know they just took one last year, high second round, but with the fact that Sam Malu's getting up there in age, that would not shock me because, when in doubt, the Eagles default to the trenches. The trenches can be either offensive line or defensive line. And Skoronski is a guy who I think could even be value at number 10. That's the only way they go offense if they don't go defense in the first round is for.
Well, remember, Howie's always big about value. So, yeah, I mean, he is obsessed with value. And if he's got the 10th pick, he wants to not only get a good player, he wants to get value at that 10th pick. And he will not hesitate to drop down. So if we're talking about those corners, and if he doesn't think they're worthy at 10, but they're worthy at 15, 16, he'll drop down and he might go in that direction. Defensive line is also, because of all the uncertainty, as good as their defensive line is, they got a ton of free agents. And as you mentioned, it's always trenches. And then the offensive perspective, more likely that high, it would have to be a tackle than an interior guy. And you got to start thinking about the future. Lane Johnson has started to quietly talk about, only playing a few more seasons. You got to think about the future. But that high, it rules out a lot of positions for the way the Eagles think. It really does.
It does. And by the way, watching that championship game last night, I did watch it till I had to go on the air on WIP last night. A guy who the Eagles won't be drafting because he's not even draft eligible. But it just absolutely wowed me. And I saw him playing during this year, but it was the best game I ever saw him play. The Bowers tight end from Georgia.
Oh, yeah, he's good.
He's Dallas Goedert with more speed. He's
good.
Absolutely a stud in the blocking game. Huge kid. Catches everything that comes his way. Runs through tackles same way Dallas Goedert does. Oh, and runs by guys as well. And he's only a regular sophomore. He's not even a redshirt sophomore, which would make him draft eligible. He's a true sophomore, so he's not even coming out in this year's draft. And he's so far and away the best tight end in football. It's ridiculous. I know the Eagles have Dallas Goedert, but we saw the backup tight ends they have, and they were okay holding down the fort at best. If you could come with a 1-2 punch of those two guys, Bowers and Goddard, I know it's Joey, getting ahead of yourself, 18 months ahead of yourself, but man,
they're not
taking last night.
There's only one football. You got they're fine. AJ, Devontae Smith, they're not taking. The kid from Notre Dame as well. It's a good tight end draft. He's more of a sort of Gronk type, I would say, than receiving type. But he can do everything. But it's a good tight end draft. But the Eagles aren't going to be looking for a tight end.
No, not this year. And the guy I want to take is not eligible, so it doesn't much matter. But man, he was just unstoppable last night. That was scary what they did to TCU. Congrats to Georgia. I know we got a couple Georgia guys who are the Eagles now who were there last year. This year's team might be better than last year's team. 2 reasons why I can say that. And I know they almost lost to Ohio State. If the kid makes the field goal on the last play of the game, which he had no chance whatsoever, you talk about missing a field goal. It was wide left off his foot in the Ohio State game. But the beatdown that they put on TCU last night, and they went undefeated. Last year's Georgia team, you remember, did not. They lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game, then turned around and beat the snot out of them in the actual championship.
And they don't even have a real good prospect at quarterback. It's pretty amazing.
How good pretty good. He's not going to be a starter. He's undersized. No. He's got a good solid arm. He doesn't have a rocket, but he's got a good solid arm. He made himself a draftable player with the performance last time.
Well, he might get drafted, and probably will get drafted, but he's not going to be a high-level prospect. You normally, like Stroud and Bryce Young, I mean, they're high-level prospects, and you expect them to be good at that level. But the fact that Georgia has been as dominant without that type of player at quarterback is pretty impressive. And, they're one of the only teams that plays a modicum of defense at the college level. And even they get waxed occasionally in SEC games.
And their defense returned. I was actually questioning their defense because they gave up 30 against LSU in the SEC championship game, gave up 40 to Ohio State in the semifinals. Oh, they showed up last night. They took TCU completely out of their game. It was pretty damn impressive by the Bulldogs. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We are expecting to be joined next by Dave Zangaro from NBC Sports Philly. Dave G going to do a spot with us as we talk about the Eagles moving forward into the playoffs against who we don't know, who we prefer. That's something we'll ask Dave Zangaro next here on Birds 365.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
This is Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Thanks for jumping in with Mac and Mac. We thank our next guest for doing just that as well. You recognize him for the work he does on TV on NBC Sports Philly. You got to be reading him all the time, NBCSportsPhilly.com. And check out the Eagle Eye podcast with our buddy Ruben Frank. Good to get David Zangaro back up with us again here on Birds 365. Dave Z, I haven't talked to you. How was your New Year?
It was good, man. How about you?
I worked. I was on the air. When the ball dropped, I had it on TV. But
extra
I was on
ships, man. Holidays means extra ships. That's how it works.
Exactly. Dave, I asked this question of bud of yours from yesteryear, our very own Derek Gunn, just a half an hour ago. You're a guy who's there every single day, following the team. You get a good grasp on Mojo. And if I need to explain Mojo to you, I will. I don't think I do. I think you understand.
He saw Austin Powers, I assume. He knows. Dave knows.
Yeah, Austin Powers, one of my all-time favorite movies. Thanks for referencing that, John. Understanding what Mojo is. How is the Eagles' Mojo now that they finished 14-3 with a little bit of a stumble down the stretch, injuries and issues and the like, but with a week to wait to find out who they play and then get ready to prep and get some downtime and rest? Where's the Eagles' Mojo at right now?
That's a fair question. I think that, most teams would rather go into the playoffs with a full head of steam and playing their best football. And that's not the case for the Eagles. We get that. But I also got the sense that, once they did what they wanted to accomplish, they kind of feel like, okay, now we're in a really good spot. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't questions about this team and about the health of the team, which is my biggest concern at certain areas. But I feel like they just accomplished what they wanted to do. It took them longer to get there. They should have had it wrapped up earlier than they needed, or than they needed to get it wrapped up. But you know what? I don't sense that they're worried about not having momentum going into the playoffs and that sort of thing. Would you like to have it? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you want to win every game. You want to have that good feeling.
Yeah.
But I don't get the sense that they're thinking, oh, man, we're really not playing well right now. We're going to be in trouble. I don't get that sense at all.
Yeah, either do I, Dave. And I'll go more style points than Mojo. I mean, you don't get extra wins for those style points. They were able to get the number one seed, which was the goal. And boy, I can't remember a year where it's been set up more nicely, shall we say, for the number one seed. The top threat, at least on paper, would be San Francisco, which is a very good team, but they're starting a third-string rookie quarterback who's done a tremendous job, but he's still a third-string rookie quarterback. I mean, that's pretty good. You look at Tampa Bay. I was just looking at the PFF grades for the year. Tampa Bay is one of the worst teams in football. The Giants are even worse. When you look at the film, they're right there with the Chicago Bears and the Houston Texans of the world when they're looking at talent. And people talk about them getting potential upsets in the first round. The Eagles have 4 potential playoff opponents. Do any of them scare Dave Zangaro?
No. I mean, of those four, I think the one that you circle is the Cowboys. Just because Dak has been very good against the Eagles, but they're also a different team away from AT&T. I mean, they're not the same when they play here. So I mean, they're the team that, if you're asking me, like, which is the toughest draw in the divisional round, it's them. I don't think they scare you. I mean, I think the Cowboys are a very beatable team. They stand out to me just because they have very talented players on both sides of the ball. Whereas, some of the teams in the playoffs are kind of really one way or the other. Even the 49ers are very balanced, right? You think of them as having a great defense, but they have really good offensive players too. The Cowboys have a little bit of that, but they're also the Cowboys, and it's January, and I know that shouldn't matter, but it kind of feels like it does. And until they prove to me that they're not going to recoil and be the Cowboys of the last 20 years in the playoffs, and I don't know if they really scare you that much.
Dave, 2-part question. And the first one is either, if you've got an exact number, feel free to affix it. If not, I need your general opinion on it. How often do the Eagles, with Jalen Hurts as their quarterback, allow him to audible different plays on the line of scrimmage?
That's tricky to come up with a number because, in addition, it's not just like he's at the line and he picks a play. There are sometimes checks based on the coverage, right? So it's not like that's what makes it really tough to tell you exactly like what the number is, because there are times where, he's reading a player on the defense and gives a check because of it. Is that really him audibling? No, it looks like he does sometimes, but he has a little bit of autonomy. But they also give him some on zone reads and RPOs where, yes, there are like definitive black and white reasons to pull it or to throw it or to hand it off or to keep it, but it's not going to be 100% all the time, right? So he has, I think that's what you're looking for, is like, what's the autonomy number for Jalen Hurts in this offense? And I have no clue how to give that to you.
Right. That's why I said if you could attach a number, I'd love it. Didn't think you could. It was it's a hard question.
I would if I felt like I had a way to do it. It's just there's so many different elements.
Yeah, I think it's the difference between a modern NFL offense versus the old school. Certain guys, if you go back to 20, 30 years, would run the game from the line of scrimmage. If you go back to the 70s, I mean, guys like Terry Bradshaw and Fran Tarkenton and Ken Stabler called their own plays. It doesn't exist anymore. So I think, the Eagles have built this offense, and you have options. There's 2 or 3 plays. Sometimes you can kill from one play to another. I don't think that old school sort of autonomy exists anymore, really. Maybe Tom Brady, but I think it's almost becoming extinct. Do you see it around the rest of the league, Dave?
Not really. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, even when Jalen audibles, he doesn't have the full menu.
Yeah.
It's like, if they show this look, this is the play. If they show this look, this is the play. Which makes sense. You have really smart. It will be a lot for any quarterback in this NFL to just have the menu at the line of scrimmage, especially for a guy in his second year as a starter. So, and it's why they pay Shane Steichen a lot of money to call these plays.
Yeah. He's got to get more money soon. Maybe.
As you can probably guess, the reason I'm asking the question is this past week, with him returning from injury, Jalen Hurts' plays did not look like Jalen Hurts plays of the level of potential MVP in the National Football League. Much more aggressive, taking off, making plays with his legs. It didn't happen this week. Understandably so, because he's coming back from the injury and they want to make sure that they want to get him re-injured before the playoff starts. More so, the actual play calling coming down ahead of time, Jalen's decision within the play where he decides what he's going to do with the football, as you just kind of documented for us. If we can all agree that it was not truly Jalen-like in the way that the plays played themselves out this past Sunday, Why? Who was the main reason that it was a less Jalen running game than we're used to seeing?
The coaching staff. Even when Jalen made those wise decisions, that's the coaching staff, and he's hearing the coaching staff tell him, get down, get down, get down. Because I think Jalen on his own he wants to play the way he wants to play. The play calling certainly is all the coaching staff. I mean, they weren't going to expose him. I mean, there were no design runs. The read option game wasn't there. And it's something to watch. I think once they got in the red zone, we really saw that without the threat of his legs, this red zone offense is not the same. So when I mentioned the thing that concerns you about this offense going into the playoffs, or about this team going into the playoffs, is the health. I mean, that's number one on my list is how healthy is Jalen Hurts going to be? And is his health going to allow them to call the game the way they want to call the game and the way he wants to play the game? I think a lot of this was precautionary in week 18, because in the playoffs, you can't do that. I mean, you can't have the play calls we saw in week 18 in the playoffs. You just can't do it, whether he's hurting or not. I mean, you just have to play to win the game. You have to do whatever it takes. So you hope that this extra week gives him a chance to heal up a little bit more, and he can get out there and be the guy we saw leading up to this, because it was frustrating to watch. I mean, there was even the one play he slides before the first down. You're going, holy cow, he's really taking this to heart. And you appreciate that from him, because that probably kills him inside. And we saw that after the game, him trying to talk about it. If there's one thing Jalen Hurts doesn't want to talk about, it's him being injured or him playing differently because of an injury. But I give him credit for doing it in this game, because they clearly asked him to.
Yeah, and we talked about that word fear. I don't fear anybody in the playoffs. I guess my biggest fear would be Nick Sirianni. I mean, you and I are with him all the time, Dave. I mean, he talks the way he talks about injuries. He's talking, when Jalen first got it, we had the superhero talk. Oh, he heals better than everybody else. And then he comes out after the game and he said, I know he was hurting. He was hurting bad. I was surprised by that. I was surprised he went that far. And that concerned me a little bit. But you mentioned you thought he was being precautionary. It was a bad opponent. It was the junior varsity of a team that doesn't match up with you with their starters. In the playoffs, you can't play like that, right? I mean, even if he is banged up, you got to go win the game. So I think you're on the same page with me in that aspect of it. They have to play. Even if he's banged up, they got to put the zone read stuff back in the game plan, correct?
Oh, you have to. It changes so much. I always go back to that Tennessee game. I don't think I've ever seen a defense play a quarterback the way they played him. And it was just such a testament to how good he's been with his legs. I mean, they stopped pass rushing in that game because they were so worried about him taking off. If you don't have that threat, I think Jalen's still a good quarterback. He's proven that he can play from the pocket, but it's not even about him running. It's about the threat of him running.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
If you don't have that, the numbers change up, and it gives the defense an advantage against this offense. So, and this offense isn't particularly complex.
No.
I
say it all the time. People think it's the simplest offense.
It's really a very simple offense, and that's fine. Like I don't have a problem with that because they have good players and they have a quarterback that changes his numbers, and it should be simple. And I think it's wise that it's simple. But if you lose such a big element of that offense, and now you have this simple offense, it can become predictable in a hurry, and that's the biggest fear. You can't have that happen. So, I'm with you, John, because what are you saving him for? If you got to call the plays, you got to put the read option stuff back in there. I think you don't have to go crazy with it, but it has to be there. The threat of it has to be there.
Dave, last night on WIP, I tried to get Eagle fans to take a step back and look at the 17-game season rather than just the 3-game season the Eagles played these last 3 weeks, 2 of which were without Jalen Hurts, by the way, to try and take a big picture look. But I do need to now focus on this past game in one aspect, and I think it's important going forward because it's injury related. And that is real. Miles Sanders was very healthy in week 2. What does it mean now? Nada, because he's not 100% healthy now. He's been practicing with a knee brace. Your buddy, Ruben Frank, told me last night he didn't wear it in the game on Sunday, and he also didn't run the ball near as effectively as he has all year. How much is Miles' knee a factor going into the postseason? Am I overstating the worry on this, or is it legit?
I think there's a little bit of worry there. He's been limited the last 2 weeks because of it. So that's where this is one of the injuries that I really feel like a week off can help quite a bit. There are some, is a week off for Lane going to matter? I don't know. I mean, it's one less game of wear and tear. That helps. But for an injury like Miles' injury, I think the week off really will help. I don't know if he's going to be 100% for the playoffs, but I think he'll be good enough. And that's not great. I get that because he was so healthy for so much of the season and it mattered. It was the first time we've seen him be this healthy,
right?
Really since his rookie season. So, it's a shame that he got hurt late in the year. But, if you're looking for one guy who this bye week's really going to benefit, Miles Sanders is at the top of the list for me.
Yeah, one positive piece of injury news was C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Dave. They threw him back into the pool, man, 100%. I didn't see that coming. And they used him in multiple roles, sort of like they were using Avante at the end before he was injured. So, when they played base, he was back at his normal safety position. Then he was in the slot when they needed a nickel back. He's a big part of that defense. He's, I joke, what does CJ and Dak Prescott have in common? They both lead the league in interceptions and they both missed 5 games, which is, yeah. He's been a tremendous playmaker. All good from that perspective. He looked completely healthy.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of those things where it's like if the lacerated kidney is healed,
it's healed.
He's healed. He's good to go. You don't worry about re-injury there, I guess. He played well. I thought he was very active. He looked good up near the line of scrimmage. He's played a ton there, so that wasn't a surprise. And the Eagles clearly feel better with Reed Blankenship at safety than they do Josiah Scott at nickel, which I'm fine with. I get that. And having just some kind of stabilizing force in the middle of the field is going to mean a lot because over the last couple of games before week 18, they were really susceptible in the middle of the field. And we saw Kaiser have 2 really bad games.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's all on Kaiser. And by the way, he played, I thought, his best game of the year.
He did. He had a tremendous bounce back.
In the previous 2 games, he was getting picked apart in coverage and they were really throwing it at him a lot. And I just think a lot of that was just the absence of Avante Maddox. Because in these zone coverages, like the spacing in the middle of the field matters so much. And when you have different pieces out there, it kind of gets all out of whack. So CJ being back, I think will just really stabilize the middle of the field because teams are still going to shy away from throwing outside when you have Bradbury and Slay, and they're going to try to find the middle of the field. And if CJ's in there, not only can he stop that, but he can make a big play here and there. And that would be a huge difference.
Dave, John and I discussed this briefly early in the show yesterday before we had the later in the day announcement that actual requests have been put out for Eagle coordinators to interview for head coaching positions. Working under the assumption that one, if not both of the guys are going to get head coaching jobs in the league. One by one, who is the top candidate to replace? We'll go Shane Steichen first. Where do you think the Eagles look and or make a aggressive decision if Steichen gets a job somewhere else? Who's going to be the top candidate to be the new offensive coordinator?
Well, they might need to promote Brian Johnson just to avoid losing him.
Yeah.
I have a feeling he's going to be a hot candidate for offensive coordinator jobs. And he's in the building. And I think Nick likes the idea of promoting within. He hasn't had to do it yet, really. We saw some lower level assistants get promoted, but I think he likes that idea. We know the Eagles like it to a certain extent. Now, if they get depleted and they feel like there's not enough talent in the building, here comes Rich Scangarello again, trying to replenish. But I think Brian Johnson will be the top internal candidate, but there's also Kevin Patullo, who's their pass game coordinator, kind of Nick Sirianni's right-hand man. he's the guy on that coaching staff we probably don't talk about enough.
Oh yeah, he was going to be the head coach when Nick got COVID. People
he was going to take over head coach. We forgot about that. Yeah, he's going to take over head coaching responsibilities. So those two guys in house make the most sense. Of course, Frank Reich doesn't have a job, and if he doesn't have a job, I think that's always going to be a possibility. We know what Nick thinks of Frank, and Frank doesn't have. I think some head coaches would have an ego problem going back to work for one of their former understudies and being under them. I don't think Frank that wouldn't be a problem for Frank ego wise. Now, would that happen? I don't know. Or then another name, Marcus Brady, who has been working with the Eagles, consulting Jonathan Gannon, was Frank's offensive coordinator after Nick Sirianni. I think that one's probably a little less likely, but there are some.
That was an interesting move, bringing him in to help the defense. I thought that was an interesting tweak by the Eagles.
And it's hard to know what he's doing, but it makes sense.
All right, and the other half of the question was, who's going to replace Gannon? If Gannon goes elsewhere, internal, external. I threw out Vic Fangio's name a couple of weeks ago just because it made too much sense. And he did visit the Eagles during training camp, made one of those glad-handing walkthroughs and talked to absolutely everybody. Sean Payton is kind of on record saying, if I get a gig, I'm going to try and get Vic Fangio to be my defensive coordinator. So that could thwart the Eagles. But interior, exterior, who's going to take over if Gannon goes elsewhere as a head coach?
Sure. I mean, Fangio would be ideal. I mean, this defense is it's not a Fangio defense, but it comes from the Fangio defensive tree, so to speak. So that would be an easy transition. If you're looking internal, Denard Wilson, defensive backs coach, I think I'm actually surprised he hasn't been given more looks around the league. I think he could be ready for a jump. And then kind of an outside the box one, maybe just because he's so young, but Nick Rawless.
Yeah,
the
Nick,
linebackers
they
coach.
love Nick. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm starting to wonder if he won't be a hot name coming up soon for other teams. And he's young. I mean, gosh, I don't think he's 30 yet, but
no. Yeah. He was the youngest position coach in the league when he got the gig.
He'll get there eventually. I wouldn't worry if I'm Nick Rawless. Like, it'll come. But he's another one that I think might make some sense. And one that I would be interested in, I don't think they are. Jeremiah Washburn, to me, is just a fascinating guy. I think, and the Eagles have used him in so many different ways over the years.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, I think that guy can kind of do whatever he wants. And I think he would make a good DC. I don't think they'd go that way. Like, I'm putting together lists, actually. It's nice. I had this teed up. I'm putting together lists of, options. But now I don't have him on there, but he would be on my mind if I were them. I don't think he is.
Yeah. And, I think Nick is very, and you know this, Dave, he's, I think he really enjoys he's going to enjoy the promotion aspect. Like, he wants to groom guys. Like, he always talks about Alex Tanney on the offensive side that's a
clear progression too. You can see Shane leaves, Brian gets promoted, Alex Tanney is now the quarterback's coach.
Yeah. So I think he really enjoys that part of it.
And then in 3 years, Jeff will fire him because he wants to make.
Exactly. Yeah, because
I like it.
Hey, you win the Super Bowl, the standards go up. So, and then you need a scapegoat when things go wrong. If one, Shane's percentage wise, he's in the lead. He's got, there's 5 openings. 3 of them want to talk to Shane so far. I'm surprised Denver's not on that list yet. And Gannon has been mainly Houston, but people down in Houston think, he might have gotten the job last year if they showed the courage of their convictions, or Josh McCown. Who do you think is more likely of the two to be a head coach?
I'll play the numbers and say Shane Steichen, but I think the interest in Gannon last year in Houston was very real. But I am not in the business of trying to predict what the Houston Texans are going to do.
Good point. Yeah, you were down there.
I have like that organization is a mess.
But they got that weird Cleveland thing going on. Like Cesario's he's John Carroll, that weird pipeline. And John Gannon didn't go to John Carroll, but it's Cleveland area. They got this weird connection where they're all like, but Jonathan Gannon was hired before, as you know, Dave, he was hired before Nick Sirianni. He was going to come in here as the defensive coordinator. Josh McDaniels got the job. Another sort of John Carroll Cleveland weird thing. It's kind of like a cabal with those Cleveland guys.
It's the NFL Illuminati. Yeah, it is kind of weird. I don't know what Houston's going to do. That organization's such a mess. And Shane might have options. Who knows? Like Shane might have a couple teams like very interested in him, and we'll see how the timing works out. And by the way, like I think Jonathan Gannon could be a pretty good head coach.
Oh yeah,
I think
he's a great leader.
He has that part of it down. And I know people get concerned about his scheme at times, but you need more than that to be a successful NFL head coach. You know,
one of the cliches I've always bought into, you know, there's a million cliches around the NFL. And with coaching, you got that if you're hiring a scheme, you're doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. It's about leadership, it's about teaching. More so. I'm not saying you don't need a scheme, but more so, I think the leadership part of it, the getting people on the same page, I think that's a bigger part of it.
Yeah, it is. And it's, you know, Nick's kind of been that. Obviously, this is his scheme offensively, but turning over play calling.
Yeah.
I think that kind of shows that there's a bigger value to the head coaching job than just being a coordinator.
Let me make a bold prediction here. When Jonathan Gannon gets a head coaching job, because I think it's a when, not an if, but it could be Houston this year, might be one of the other jobs. When that happens, if by the second year in charge as the head coach, the defense is fourth most all-time sacks in the history of the National Football League in that new town, they won't be complaining about he's not aggressive enough. They'll just go, wow, we're fourth all-time in sacks. That is such a Philly thing. It's not going to happen anywhere else on the planet the way it does here in Philadelphia. But we'll get to that when Gannon actually does get out of town. All right, here's the question I've got for you, Dave, about where the Eagles sit right now. Got an entire week to do as they please. Days off, except for, as you noted on NBC Sports Philly, Jalen Hurts said, no, I'm coming in to watch film. Hey, coach, you got to meet me at the facility. We got to do some film breakdown on an off day. So God bless Jalen for that. But they get a couple days, take their time, heal up for the guys that are injured. The one thing that Sirianni said on WIP that made me laugh, we're going to get some great practices in. They don't ever get great practices in. What the hell are you talking about? Your estimation of a great practice. Well, in those great practices, what are they actually going to do, Dave Z?
They're going to run their own stuff. And they're just going to run it kind of basic, but they'll run it because like game planning makes no sense right now. You have four possibilities. Now they have coaches that are working on it. Like this is where the lower level coaches make their money. I mean, they'll split them up and they'll say, all right, you and you deal with the Cowboys, you guys, Bucks and all that. And they'll work ahead that way. They'll advance scout those teams, but you can't game plan for four teams at once. So it's basically get your fundamentals down. And we talked to Jason Kelsey after the game, and he said he appreciates this time because he gets to just worry about his technique and little things that he can rewatch his film and see what he's doing wrong, kind of regardless of what the defense is doing. So that's what they'll use it for. And it is valuable. And you have this time, you might as well try to get the most value out of it as you can while you heal up.
Yeah, it is. It's tremendously valuable because everybody else has got to play, and they got to play in the playoffs, and it's do or die. And you know, when they shifted to 14 teams in the playoffs, Dave, and they scaled it back from one first round bye to two first round, from 2 to 1. I mean, that's everything, right? That is everything. The road to the Super Bowl goes through Lincoln Financial Field. There's got to be a sense of urgency, right? The Eagles have to take advantage of this spot. We talked about the coaching staff, the number one seed. You don't always happen. That's one of the things shake my head about not all Eagles fans, but certain Eagles fans. They set a franchise record for wins. They have a top 5 offense, a top 5 defense. Don't get used to this. This is special this season.
It's special. And the in the back of my mind is like, look at all these free agents too. You don't know when you'll be back in this spot.
No. And I always go back to Dan Marino. It was his second year he made the Super Bowl, and he said, it was pretty easy for him. I think he threw for 5,000 yards that year. I'll be back. Never got back. Never. And that's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Understood.
Enjoy this run because it's not going to happen every year.
Last one for me, Dave. I had John look up before the show started where Pro Football Focus ranked the job that the Eagles' replacement right tackle did this past week. I got my own eyes. I watched it. I didn't think Jack Driscoll played all that well. He was like the 9th highest rated Eagle player out of the 22 guys that started, which is not terrible. It's kind of middle of the road.
9th on offense. He was not.
9th on offense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was 9th of the 22. All right. So that's not good. So my eyes did not deceive me. I didn't think he had a great game. Anytime you're replacing Lane Johnson, there's going to be a drop-off. There's no way you're holding up that standard when you're a backup player like Driscoll. But he hasn't even been as good as I thought he might be. Did the Eagles even contemplate getting Mailata some snaps at right tackle just in case this week? If Lane comes back, if Lane re-injures himself, or are they just going to live and die with Jack Driscoll the rest of the way?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad idea to get him a few. Because that Lane injury, everyone's hoping he can play through it. It's going to be tough. And it just is. It's a tough injury to play through. All your power comes from your abdomen when you're a player, especially an offensive lineman. So even if he plays, I don't know if he's going to be Lane, but 75% of Lane, you take that over the alternative. So he's going to try to tough it out. It's not a bad idea. I think they're going to roll with Driscoll, and they don't help him a ton either.
No.
They kind of just say, well, we'll live with that.
Yeah.
He's going to get beat sometimes. We'll live with that. It's scary at times because you're like, help him out. Give him.
It's interesting, Dave. That's my one criticism of this coaching staff. I think, next man up mentality is good for, optimism, and you got to treat the guys. I always say coaches have to be optimistic, right? You can't be like, oh, woe is me. Jack Driscoll's got to play. You can't act like that as a coach. You got to say, hey, next man up, go out and do it. But you also got to protect guys and realize it's all the same thing with 3rd and 30. That Tampa 2 sort of invert defense, that would have worked probably with Avante. You don't ask Josiah Scott to do that.
You don't want Josiah to have to cover that much ground?
Yeah.
Sprinting back at a sprinter's pace. Yeah, no, that didn't quite work out, right?
I mean, Jack Driscoll, you don't expect him to be Lane Johnson. You might say, hey, Jack, go be Lane Johnson. But behind the scenes, you're like, we got to help Jack out a little bit.
It's tough because that's what makes this offense kind of tick is having 2 tackles.
Yeah.
You don't have to help. Like, even Mailata hasn't had a great year, but they don't help him. Those tackles are out there on islands, and for the most part, they don't get beat that often.
No.
So if you have to start chipping a ton, it just changes the numbers. And the Eagles are all about the number game on offense. That's why they love Jalen on the backside, right? It's like if you can affect the numbers positively, you're going to be pretty aggressive and you're going to kind of put your foot to their throat. And when you have to keep helping a tackle, it kind of changes that a little bit.
Dave, tell us when the latest Eagle Eye podcast was either just posted or the next one's going to be posted for the people who enjoy your work with Ruben Frank on the podcast.
We are recording Tuesday, today, 2 p.m. So we'll have Tuesday, Thursday, and then we're going to do one after we find out who the heck the Eagles are going to play next week.
Understood. We'll be listening. We appreciate you jumping in with us today. We'll get you on during the playoffs again as well, buddy. Thanks.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thanks,
Dave Zangaro, NBC Sports Philadelphia, jumping in with us here on Birds. All right, Jody Mac coming back. Oh, we're going to put a bow on the show.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
All right, Johnny Mac, a little late with Dave Z, so we got to wrap this up pretty quickly. Prediction out of you. The Penderer-in-Chief will be in front of the media today. Any specific prediction on direction that he go? Maybe a little Georgia action, tip of the cap to his two defensive high draft picks this last year. By the way, I don't know if you're watching. Nakobe at the game last night. They got him on the sideline.
Yeah, I saw Nakobe for Georgia. I don't know if Jordan. I didn't see Jordan. Jalen Rager was there, so Eagles fans were having fun with that. TCU. Not the best day for TCU. Hey, but they made it there. I mean, give them credit for that.
Agreed, but they just got beat last night. A buddy of mine who also liked TCU, and I picked TCU, shame on me, text me and said, any chance LaDainian Tomlinson is available tonight?
Wow.
I said, they're so bad that they take Jalen Rager back right now at TCU. Little Eagles inside humor. So where's Nick going with the wardrobe today?
I think it's probably player related. He wore the Pave the Lane on whenever it was Friday. I'm gonna go with Jalen Hurts themed t-shirt today, but he's gonna be on Zoom, so it's gonna be Eagle related.
Superhuman healer, is that what you're?
You can't go down that route.
Okay, just double.
Turns out he's a human being.
Yeah,
His superpower though is the zone read, so they better get that back into the offense.
Need that superpower restored. All right, brother. I say you and I again tomorrow. I know Gil will be almost working on another guest. You're going to do this with me 2 days from now?
Let's do it.
Back in 2 and 2, 22 hours, that is.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.